Hi, I'm Jody Eckleberry-Hunt. I'm a psychologist, as many of you probably know. You know what? It strikes me. I wanted to do a video to talk a bit about abuse. Sometimes still, at this point in my career, surprising to me how many people I meet who are in abusive relationships who don't seem to recognize it. And there are many reasons, which I'm going to go into in a bit, about why that is, but I wanted to make a video to talk about abuse. And indeed, a lot of people get confused about what is abuse because they think it is just being pushed, shoved, hit, punched, and that is abuse, for sure. It's physical abuse. And then there's sexual abuse, being forced to have sex against your will, it forced upon you. I have met a fair number of people who feel like, well, that's not really abuse because they're married, but indeed it is. And then there is what we call emotional or psychological abuse. And this is to speak harshly to or about in offensive and injurious ways. The point of that is to coerce and manipulate. And some people call this gaslighting, right? So it's also trying to make people feel crazy. When you have somebody who's abusive and who loses their temper and behaves in very inappropriate ways, very abusive ways, and then try to blame it on the other person. Well, if you didn't say this, I wouldn't have had to say that. Or if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have had to hit you or to force this. So it's convincing someone, typically over time, that they're responsible for this acting out, this abusive acting out. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't recognize that because maybe they've not experienced a healthy relationship. I'm not saying that if you've never had a healthy relationship, you don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. I'm just saying that it raises the risk of you not recognizing it. Typically, when abusers start a relationship with somebody, they're not abusive to begin with. Nobody would stick around for that, right? It starts as very intense affection, and it can be very flattering. In fact, the person might also seem a little bit jealous, and that can feel really special for the person on the other end. But it quickly transforms into something much more pathological, controlling. And there are multiple forms of abuse: physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, threats, again, and coercion, so creating, sort of expanding on fears and insecurities. And I want to be clear, any one of us can find ourselves in an abusive relationship. I find that a lot of people are reluctant to address it because of the guilt and the shame and the fear, the feelings of responsibility, like I got myself into this situation, and wondering what other people are going to think. That's one barrier to getting out. Another barrier to getting out is reality. When women leave abusive relationships, the most at-risk time is then, because it sets the abuser into sort of this narcissistic temper tantrum, and they're more likely to hurt or kill their partners who are leaving. So when my background in domestic violence, we were always trained to never tell women or anyone to just leave, right? It's not that simple. There needs to be a plan. It needs to be thought out so security is factored in. Another reason why folks don't leave abusive relationships is financial and other insecurity. Is he going to take the kids away? And sometimes the thought is it's better for me to be in that home so I can protect the kids than to share custody. Or will I be able to take care of myself financially and or my children? And oftentimes the feeling is no, because the person has been controlled to not have access to the money, or to not be able to work outside the home, or to not function independently. So there are a lot of different fears going on, as well as all the gaslighting and all the mental abuse that beats people down so they don't see a way out. That's the gaslighting, and any one of us can find ourselves in that situation. So there is no judgment, no shame. And I think it's too simplistic for people to tell other people just leave. It's never just anything. And by the way, no one deserves to be abused. No one. It doesn't matter if you said something that was triggering or did something that was triggering. That is no excuse for anybody to behave in an abusive way towards you. Now, by the way, I think all of us say offhanded remarks that are maybe offensive or not healthy. That is an abusive remark, but that doesn't make, I'm talking about a consistent pattern of abusive relationships. And so I want to make sure that you have the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It's 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. Again, text START to 88788. The professionals at the Domestic Violence Hotline can tell you about the many resources available in your area, from food and shelter and clothing to legal support, but it is an understanding and empathetic person whose goal is to help you think through what you need to do to be safe and to find that safe place. So the other thing that I wanted to address is the kind of bad actors that somebody might encounter in an abusive relationship. This is another reason why folks find themselves in abusive relationships and find it hard to leave, is that the abusers are experts in manipulation and coercion. Experts. Now, one term that's being thrown around a lot these days is narcissist. And I think folks are referring to narcissistic personality disorder. And not everybody who's selfish or not everybody who's a bad actor is a narcissist. So I think that term is a little bit overused. And I'm going to talk to you briefly about that, but let me explain why this is the DSM. Narcissistic personality disorder describes somebody who has a grandiose sense of self-importance. So they're exaggerators. Oh, I'm the greatest, and what I do is the greatest. They're preoccupied with fantasies of power and brilliance, ideal love. Again, it's all about how great they are. The person believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by other special and unique persons. So again, one of the ways they get into your head is to say, well, you couldn't possibly understand me because you're not great like I am. They want to be admired. So if you provide them any feedback that is critical, there's an explosion because it does not compute. They can't possibly accept that critical feedback, even if it's not critical, it's just objective feedback, because it's not glowing, it's not admiring. The person has a sense of entitlement, that I deserve certain things. Interpersonally exploitive, so taking advantage of other people for selfish reasons. Lacking empathy. Is envious of others and is arrogant, haughty, has odd behaviors and attitudes. I want to pause for the empathy piece. So narcissistic personality disorder is really related to emotional development stunting. So think about, you have the body of an adult, but emotionally you have a personality of the emotional development of a toddler. So these are folks who are just bigger than life in their own mind. And it's a selfishness on steroids with an inability, pay attention to what I'm saying, an inability to take the perspective of another person. They can't go there. They don't have that toolkit, or to have empathy, or to see things through other people's shoes or eyes or perspectives. Here's the thing. They can, however, because they can often be charming people to begin with. Think of it as playing a role. So it's pretending to be empathetic. It cannot be sustained because, again, they don't have that toolkit. So you can if you're just an average person, you can be fooled for sure. Any of us can be, because these folks are typically charming, as are then the other bad actor is the abuser, just the straight up abuser. They don't start out that way. They are prone to temper tantrums and blaming and gaslighting and acting out because their emotional development is stunted too. It's not so much the narcissism piece, although there's a component of that. So I'm saying that you can be an abuser without being a narcissist. It's just it's sort of like just a mean-spiritedness where you're imposing your will upon other people, but you're getting away from the entitlement and I'm so great kind of stuff. One of the ways that abusers keep a relationship with someone is because they talk about how they're low self-esteem and how awful they feel, and so it can cause a sense of guilt in the person that they're in a relationship with, so that person stays, because the person who's being abused says to themselves, oh, if I only love them a little bit more, maybe they'll feel good enough about themselves to treat me well. So you see, it gets to be mixed up. And sometimes people stay, again, in relationships because they've never known a healthy relationship. Maybe they grew up with a narcissist, or they grew up in an abusive environment. And so it can be harder to recognize what is abuse if you don't have something to compare it to that is healthy love. Regardless, I want, again, you to know that no one deserves to be abused. There are ways out. And in my book, Getting to Good Riddance, a no bullshit breakup survival guide, not only do I talk about how to handle some of the bad actors, the narcissistic people, the sociopathic people, the abusive people, the people who play victim and then say, I'm going to kill myself if you leave me, how to handle some of those very delicate situations, how to set boundaries with other people, but also yourself, so that you put yourself in a situation where you feel safe and you feel empowered to say no and focus on your own health. I also then do talk about what is love, what is healthy love stories, all sorts of things. If you need help, I do, again, hope that you reach out to the domestic violence hotline. Know that you're not alone. We're not there. The folks who are on the other line at the domestic violence hotline are not there to judge you. We understand anyone can find themselves in those circumstances. And again, no one deserves to be abused.